The cabin lights hummed faintly, a soft mechanical glow stretching across rows of strangers who had no idea everything was about to go wrong. At 32,000 feet, time felt slower, thicker, and yet the moment he stepped into the aisle, the air snapped like a cable under tension. The black man in a crisp white shirt stood still, unbothered, but everyone around him behaved as if he were a threat. Two security officers boxed him in from both sides, their stances rigid, their hands hovering near their belts. A flight attendant positioned herself in front of him, chin raised, voice sharpened to a blade. "Sir, you don't belong in first class. Move. Now." A murmur rippled through the cabin like wind through broken glass. Someone whispered, "He must have snuck in." Another muttered, "Not dressed like that." But he didn't move. He didn't argue. He just lifted his eyes, steady, unreadable, as if measuring the room, as if deciding how much of himself to reveal. And then came the warning from the officer on his left, a man whose badge gleamed harder than his sense. "You have 45 minutes before we escort you off this plane." 45 minutes. That was all they thought he was worth. What they didn't know was that 45 minutes was more than enough time for him to turn an entire airline inside out. Before we continue, hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to the man in the white shirt. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't plead. He simply shifted his weight, calm as someone standing in line for coffee, not someone cornered by security in the middle of a plane he paid to board. The lead flight attendant tightened her jaw, her patience thinning into something uglier than procedure. "Sir, first class is for verified premium passengers, people who meet the standard. Please return to your assigned area." Assigned. That word hit like a slap dressed as etiquette. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "this is my seat." She scoffed, loud enough for Rose. For through 7 to catch every syllable. Not anymore. She tapped on her tablet, intentionally slow, intentionally theatrical. "Passenger Carter. Seat 2A. Status, invalid." A few passengers nodded knowingly, as if her lie were proof. She didn't know he'd seen her delete his name from the manifest seconds earlier. He didn't react, not yet. He simply breathed once, steady and deep, the way someone does when they've lived this scene far too many times already. The second officer stepped closer, boots planting with the confidence of someone sure he'd never be questioned. "Sir, stand down. You're disrupting boarding." "He hasn't moved," a voice whispered from behind. A trainee flight attendant, the youngest on the crew, watched with troubled eyes, her fingers frozen on the beverage tray she was supposed to be organizing. She'd seen the scan flash green when he boarded. She'd seen his name marked verified. She'd seen the system change afterward, not before. But when she opened her mouth, her supervisor snapped, "Trainees do not speak during enforcement." Enforcement. As if he were an intruder. As if blackness were a violation of policy. The officer on his right leaned in, voice dropping into something colder. "Move now, or we will move you." Still, the man did not bend. He simply tilted his head slightly, just enough to make both officers shift uneasily. And then, with no urgency at all, he spoke 4 soft words into the small mic clipped beneath his collar. Words quiet enough for only him to hear, but powerful enough to change everything. "Rachel, initiate Delta Protocol." The trainee's eyes widened. Delta Protocol. She'd heard rumors. Board-level override. High authority chain. Something only the top 0.01% of corporate leadership could access. Suddenly, the man in the white shirt didn't look like a lost passenger anymore. He looked like someone waiting for a storm he'd already summoned. And the storm was coming fast. 45 minutes. That's all they gave him. That's all he needed. The aisle felt narrower now, as if the walls themselves were bracing for what came next. Marcus Carter remained perfectly still between the two security officers, his breathing calm, his posture controlled, the kind of steady composure that did not come from confidence, but from experience. He had lived through moments like this before, different cities, different uniforms, same energy. The lead flight attendant, the one who had declared his seat invalid, stepped forward again with that clipped, over-polished tone used by people who believed authority was the same thing as correctness. Sir, you need to comply. You are holding up the entire boarding process. Marcus did not look at her. He simply responded, I am in my assigned seat. His voice was soft, so soft that the officer on his left leaned closer, as if silence itself was defiance. The trainee flight attendant hovered several feet away, torn between protocol and conscience, her fingers fidgeting at her side. She knew what she had seen. She had watched his boarding pass flash green. She had watched the system validate his identity. She had watched Nicole, the senior attendant, erase his name. She had seen everything. But she was young, new, and still learning how the hierarchy on a plane operated. The wrong sentence could cost her job. The wrong silence could cost her integrity. Marcus shifted slightly, enough to draw the officer's attention without escalating the situation. 45 minutes, he said under his breath, not to them, but to himself. He had been given deadlines before, usually from people who had no idea what he was capable of. Meanwhile, a man in row 4 raised his phone again, only to have a hand slapped down on his shoulder. Put the device away, the security officer ordered. Recording is not allowed during an act of enforcement. Enforcement. The word carried an ugly weight, as if Marcus were a threat instead of a customer who had simply taken his rightful seat. The trainee swallowed hard before stepping forward. Captain Daniel, she said softly, I think something is wrong. His boarding scan was green. Nicole whipped her head around with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Trainee Lang, that is enough. You are misunderstanding what you saw. But the trainee did not step back. She lowered her voice in desperation. I saw his name in the manifest. Verified status. Seat 2A. It was there. Marcus watched her carefully, not with gratitude, but with the awareness of someone who knew how rare it was for anyone, especially someone without power, to risk speaking the truth in a controlled environment. Nicole turned to the captain. She is mistaken. His pass was fake. He must have duplicated the barcode. The passengers murmured, whispers slithering through the cabin like smoke. Fake. Did he sneak in? He does not look first class. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. It was the same sentence he had heard at 26, standing in a bank lobby, trying to make his first major deposit. The same tone he had heard at 32, walking into a hotel suite he had paid for months in advance. Bias did not evolve. It recycled itself with new uniforms, new badges, new justifications. He opened his eyes as his Bluetooth clicked softly. Rachel's voice came through the private channel, crisp, controlled, efficient. Marcus, I am here. Delta Protocol is in motion. I am contacting James and Sarah now. I am also pulling your boarding verification from the central system. There will be a full record. Marcus responded quietly. Thank you. Keep the line open. The captain stepped closer, puffing his chest in the way people did when they sensed they were losing authority but refused to admit it. Sir, this drama is unnecessary. We have important passengers who need to be seated. Please move to the rear cabin before this becomes a larger problem. Marcus lifted his eyes. It already is. The captain scoffed. You believe making threats will change anything? Marcus replied, it is not a threat. It is the truth. His voice did not rise, but the room felt it, a shift in the air as if the storm he had summoned in part 1 had finally reached the cabin door. The trainee stepped closer again. Captain, I really think you should recheck the system. His name, enough, Nicole snapped. He is not who he says he is. The officer on Marcus's right added. People like him always think they can bend the rules. The sentence stopped the trainee cold. People like him. The words floated in the air, heavy, poisonous, loud even when spoken softly. Marcus inhaled once through his nose. Slowly, firmly. The kind of breath a man takes not to steady himself, but to decide how much longer he is willing to allow others to misjudge him. 45 minutes. The countdown had already begun. The tension in the cabin thickened as if the recycled air had turned to glass. Every pair of eyes watched Marcus Carter, waiting to see whether he would snap, fold, or surrender. But he did none of those things. He sat in his rightful seat, back straight, hands resting on his knees, looking more like a man preparing for a board meeting than someone being threatened by security. Nicole stepped closer, her shoes clicking hard against the aisle floor. Sir, you are wasting everyone's time, she said, louder now, her voice sharpened by frustration. Your presence here is not authorized. You need to be escorted out before departure. Marcus looked past her, not with disrespect, but with the clarity of someone who had already seen the end of this confrontation long before it began. The trainee, Mia Lang, hovered behind Nicole, torn by the conflict in her chest. Her voice shook as she whispered, "His name was in the system. I am sure of it. I saw the scan." Nicole snapped her head around and hissed, "You did not see anything. You are a trainee. Know your place." The captain moved between them and raised a hand to silence further argument. But his attempt at control only made the situation feel more brittle. "Sir," he said to Marcus, "you will need to comply or be forcibly removed. I have a responsibility to my passengers." Marcus met his eyes with a calmness that unsettled the captain more than any raised voice could have. "And I have a responsibility to the truth," Marcus said. Those words hung in the air, steady and certain. The man in row 4 shifted in his seat, unable to stay quiet any longer. "He has not done anything wrong," the passenger muttered. But before he could lift his phone, the security officer pointed at him with a commanding tone. "Sir, sit down. Phone's away. This is an active investigation." Investigation. As if simply existing in first class while black was grounds for suspicion. Marcus lowered his gaze briefly, and in that quiet second, a memory flashed behind his eyes. He was 23, standing in a mortgage office, wearing his only good suit. The loan officer had looked at him with that same mix of doubt and condescension and said, "People like you are high risk." He had built an empire out of the ashes of that moment, but the sting resurfaced now, sharp as ever. Rachel's voice returned in his earpiece. "Marcus, Delta Protocol has been acknowledged. James is on the line. Compliance has pulled your full manifest record. They see your boarding approval. They see your payment confirmation. They see everything." Marcus breathed in slowly. "Good. Keep documenting." The captain's jaw tightened as he noticed Marcus speaking to someone. "Unseen. What are you doing? Who are you calling? This is a secure cabin. You do not have permission to be on an active communication channel." Marcus did not look at him. "I am maintaining a record." Nicole scoffed. "You people love theatrics." That sentence struck the cabin like a dropped tray. A woman in the second row gasped loudly. Mia's eyes widened with disbelief. The captain stiffened, aware that line had crossed into dangerous territory. Marcus lifted his head. It was a small movement, but it commanded the room like a rising tide. "Repeat that," he said quietly. Nicole blinked, suddenly aware of the shift. She opened her mouth, but the captain cut in quickly. "Everyone calm down. Let us all remember we are trying to resolve a simple seat dispute." "A dispute you created," Mia said, her voice trembling but resolute. Nicole spun on her. "You are out of line." Mia shook her head. "No, you are. The system showed his name. You deleted it." Gasps rippled through the cabin. The passengers leaned in. Even the security officers exchanged uncertain glances. Nicole's nostrils flared. "You are accusing me of misconduct in front of customers?" Mia swallowed. "I am stating what happened." Before Nicole could launch into another attack, Rachel's voice came through Marcus's earpiece again. "Marcus, James wants you to know that the board has joined the line. They are monitoring the live compliance feed. They have seen the deletion log." Marcus nodded once. "Understood." He looked at the captain with a calm finality that the man did not yet understand. "This is bigger than you think." The captain bristled. "Do not make this more difficult." Marcus answered, "I am not making it difficult. I am making it accurate." A whisper passed through the cabin. "Who is he?" Another voice said, "Something is not right here." A third added, "Why would his name be deleted?" The captain motioned to security. "Remove him. Now." But before they could touch him, the trainee stepped directly between Marcus and the officers, surprising even herself. "Do not," she said with a shaky breath. "He belongs here." The cabin froze. A single voice, small but true, had shifted the balance. Marcus exhaled once, softly, as if acknowledging that the first crack in the wall had finally appeared. 45 minutes remained, and the storm was just beginning. The cabin fell into a suffocating stillness, the kind that made every breath feel loud and every heartbeat feel exposed. Mia Lang stood between Marcus Carter and the two security officers, her shoulders squared even though her voice still trembled with fear. "He belongs here," she repeated, louder this time, as if saying it again would anchor the truth in the middle of a room built on lies. The captain blinked in disbelief. No trainee had ever challenged him, not in front of passengers, not with this much tension in the air. Mia, he said slowly, step aside. Now. But she did not move. Nicole stepped forward, eyes burning with humiliation. You are throwing away your career for a passenger who cannot even prove who he is. Mia shook her head, her voice cracking. He did prove it. The system proved it. Until you changed it. A wave of shocked whispers rippled through first class. A woman near the window leaned closer to her husband and whispered. She said changed. Not mistaken. Changed. The captain stiffened. This is a serious accusation. So is erasing a verified passenger, Marcus said, his voice low but steady, carrying across the aisle with a gravity no one could ignore. The security officer on Marcus's left shifted uneasily. Captain, maybe we should recheck the manifest. Just to, Nicole cut him off sharply. No. He is wasting our time. We are following protocol. Marcus lifted his eyes to her with a calm that frightened her more than anger ever could. You keep using that word. But protocol without integrity is just a weapon you point at people who cannot fight back. Nicole's jaw clenched. You do not get to lecture us about integrity. Marcus studied her for a moment. And yet here we are. A few passengers suppressed gasps. Someone muttered, she is losing control. Another whispered, that man does not sound like someone lying. The captain, visibly frustrated, stepped toward Marcus again. Sir, I need you to comply. You are escalating this situation. No, Marcus replied. I am responding to it. Rachel's voice returned in his ear, each word sharp with precision. Marcus, the board has received the system logs. The deletion was manual. They can see which terminal was used. Marcus's gaze slid toward Nicole, whose cheeks flushed red beneath the cabin lights. She recognized the change in his expression, and her posture faltered. You will not get away with this, she said weakly, but the confidence behind her voice had already cracked. A man in row 5 stood halfway up, gripping the seat in front of him. I saw him board before you did. Nobody raised an issue until you looked at him. A woman beside him nodded. This is prejudice. Plain and simple. Everyone remained seated. The captain barked, desperate to regain control. We cannot have a disturbance. The disturbance, the woman shot back, is you people treating this man like he does not matter. Mia flinched at the phrase, you people, hearing it echo from both sides with different meanings. Marcus kept his voice level. Captain, you are losing the room because they can see what you refuse to admit. That this is not about protocol or policy. It is about perception. Nicole turned toward the passengers, hands raised as if conducting damage control. Everyone please. This gentleman is attempting to occupy a first-class seat he did not pay for. Marcus answered without raising his voice. My payment confirmation is in the system. Your log shows it. But you pretended not to see it because you did not expect someone like me to sit here. The tension snapped like a wire. Mia inhaled sharply. The captain's face drained of color. Even the security officers froze. One passenger whispered, someone like me. That says it all. Another murmured, this is discrimination. Nicole tried one last time, her voice brittle. Do you have any idea who you are talking to? Marcus held her gaze. More than you know. The captain stepped back, rattled by the calm power in Marcus's tone. Sir, he said, voice quieter, what exactly is going on here? And then, before Marcus could answer, Rachel's voice came through the earpiece once more, her tone carrying the final shift of the night. Marcus, James says the board is ready for your authorization. Just say the word. Marcus exhaled slowly, his eyes never leaving the crew. The countdown was almost over, and the truth was about to land harder than any plane ever could. The silence inside the first-class cabin grew so dense it felt like a physical weight pressing against every window, every armrest, every held breath. Marcus Carter remained seated in 2A, but the power in the room had shifted entirely toward him, even if no one fully understood why yet. Mia Lang stood to his right, trembling but resolute, as if her own spine had just remembered how to stand tall. Nicole stepped back a fraction, the first sign of fear cracking through her rigid posture. She had been certain of her authority 20 minutes ago. Now she looked like someone bracing for an impact she could no longer avoid. Captain Daniel cleared his throat, the sound tight and uneasy. Sir, he said cautiously, before this escalates any further, I need to understand something. What exactly is happening here? Marcus did not respond immediately. Instead, He tilted his head slightly, listening to the tiny voice in his earpiece. Rachel said, "Marcus, the board is ready. They have confirmed the timestamp of the manual deletion. Everything is being logged. If you authorize it, they will move forward with the internal escalation." Marcus's eyes narrowed just slightly. "Thank you, Rachel. Stand by." The captain saw the shift in Marcus's expression and mistook it for hesitation. "Sir, if you are not supposed to be in this seat, we can handle it quietly. No need to involve anyone else." The implication in his tone was clear. Quiet problems. Quiet removal. Quiet humiliation. Marcus finally turned to him. "What you are asking is impossible. I will not be removed from a seat I paid for simply because someone decided I do not look the part." Nicole stepped forward again, crossing her arms tightly, as if clinging to some last thread of authority. "You keep saying you paid for it. Then prove it. Show us your financial verification. Your account statement. Something legitimate." Her words struck several passengers with visible disgust. A woman in row 3 raised her voice. "He does not have to show you anything. You do not get to demand someone's bank records because you do not like their face." A man across the aisle nodded. "This is profiling. Plain and simple." Nicole snapped back. "No, this is procedure." Marcus held her gaze. "If it were procedure, you would apply it to every passenger. Not just me." Nicole faltered. I was doing my job." "No," Marcus replied. "You were exercising your bias." The second security officer shifted, lowering his hand away from his belt. "Captain," he murmured, "this does not feel right. The passengers are concerned. The trainee is saying the log was valid. We need to reconsider this." But Nicole whipped toward him. "Do not undermine me. This is a loyalty issue." Marcus exhaled slowly, his patience thinning into something sharper. "Loyalty to what?" he asked. "The truth or your prejudice?" The officer looked down, unable to answer. Meanwhile, Mia gathered her courage again, stepping even closer. "Captain, I saw the log. I saw the verification. His name was there. It said Marcus Carter, seat 2A, verified. I saw it with my own eyes." Then she deleted it. All eyes turned to Nicole. Her face tightened. "That is a lie." Mia did not back down. "No, it is the truth." A hum of outrage rose through the cabin. A passenger near the front leaned out into the aisle and said, "If she deleted his name, that is serious misconduct." Another nodded. "Call corporate. Let them decide. This is out of control." Nicole looked around, her eyes darting in desperation. "Everyone, please. You are being manipulated. You have no idea who this man is." Marcus finally stood. Not abruptly, not threateningly, but with the quiet authority of someone who had spent a lifetime being underestimated. His voice was calm, but carried the finality of a gavel. "You want to know who I am?" The cabin went silent. Even the engines seemed to quiet. Marcus touched the small device clipped beneath his collar. "Rachel," he said, "patch them through." A soft crackle filled the air as the earpiece connected to the overhead cabin speakers, a direct override that no ordinary passenger should ever have access to. A man's voice came through, crisp and authoritative. "This is James Thompson, chairman of the board. We are fully aware of the situation on Flight 227. The individual in Seat 2A is Marcus Daniel Carter, Chief Executive Officer and 25% shareholder of Horizon Airlines." Gasps erupted across the cabin, sharp and collective, like a chorus of stunned breaths. The captain's face drained of color. The security officers froze. Mia covered her mouth with a trembling hand. Nicole stumbled back a full step, her entire body shaking. James's voice continued. "This incident is being logged in real time. Any Horizon employee who attempts to remove Mr. Carter from his seat or continues to obstruct him will be placed under immediate review and potential termination." The message ended. Silence swallowed the cabin for 2 long seconds. Then Marcus spoke, his voice steady, unshaken, and quietly devastating. "So, Nicole, you wanted to know if I could prove myself." He paused. "Now the entire airline has." The countdown was over, and the reckoning had begun. The moment the overhead speakers fell silent, the atmosphere inside the cabin cracked open. Shock did not arrive quietly. It rippled through the rows like a sudden drop in altitude, a collective realization that the man they had cornered, doubted, dismissed, and profiled was not only innocent, but held more authority over the aircraft than everyone standing in front of him. Marcus Carter, Chief Executive Officer and 25% shareholder. A title spoken aloud by the chairman of the board himself. Nicole's knees wobbled as if her entire spine had lost its structure. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The captain staggered back a step, gripping the headrest of the nearest seat to steady himself. One of the security officers whispered under his breath, "Oh my God," as if the truth had punched the air out of him. Mia Lang, the trainee who had dared to speak up, stood frozen with her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with a mix of awe and relief. Passengers murmured, some in disbelief, some in outrage, some simply stunned. One man whispered, "They were about to drag the CEO off his own plane." A woman added, "She deleted the CEO's name. This is unbelievable." Marcus did not look triumphant. He did not smirk or gloat. Instead, he lifted his chin with the calm precision of a man who had spent decades learning how to stay composed in the face of disrespect. Nicole attempted to gather herself, but her voice shook violently. "Mr. Carter, sir. I did not know. I did not realize." Marcus turned his gaze toward her slowly, without anger, without rush, and somehow that restraint made the moment feel even heavier. "That," he said quietly, "is the problem." Nicole swallowed hard. "I was following protocol." Marcus's reply cut cleanly through the air. "You were following prejudice." Her face crumpled, but before she could speak, Captain Daniel stepped forward, trying to salvage what little authority he had left. "Mr. Carter, I sincerely apologize. Had we known..." Marcus raised a hand, and even that small motion silenced the captain instantly. "If you had known who I was, you would have treated me differently. That is exactly why this matters." The captain's breath caught. He could not argue. He could not defend himself. He could only stand there as the weight of the truth settled squarely on his shoulders. Marcus continued, his voice calm but firm. "You did not ask my name before threatening me with removal. You did not check the logs before assuming I forged a pass. You did not question why a trainee was the only one who bothered to verify the truth." He paused. "You just saw a black man in a plain shirt and decided he did not belong." The passengers murmured again, louder this time, voices tightening with sympathy and anger. Mia stepped closer, finding her courage in the truth now laid bare. "Sir," she said gently, "I am so sorry. I knew something felt wrong. Marcus gave her a nod of acknowledgement, small but meaningful. "You spoke up when others stayed silent. That matters." Nicole flinched as if struck. Rachel's voice returned softly in Marcus's ear, crisp and controlled. "Marcus, compliance has joined. The board is reviewing all audio, system logs, and cabin feed in real time. They want to know if you want to proceed with on-site disciplinary action." Marcus responded without looking away from the crew. "Yes, proceed." The captain's eyes widened. "Sir, please. There must be another way to resolve this." Marcus studied him. "Tell me, Captain, if I had been any other passenger, any regular customer, what would you have done?" Captain Daniel looked down. "We would have removed you from the aircraft." "Exactly," Marcus said. "So do not ask for mercy now that you know my title." Nicole's voice cracked as she took a desperate step forward. "Mr. Carter, please. I have worked here for 12 years. I did not mean to offend you. You just judged me," Marcus interrupted gently, "before you ever spoke to me." She froze. The truth was too precise to escape. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Marcus gave the words that sealed her fate. "Rachel," he said, "initiate staff suspension protocols for all involved personnel. Effective immediately." There was a soft electronic chime overhead as the command registered. Nicole's tablet went dark, her access revoked in an instant. The captain's badge vibrated with a warning. One of the security officers checked his device and exhaled sharply. "We are locked out," he whispered. Gasps broke through the cabin again. Marcus remained still, his voice unwavering. Integrity is not optional in this company. Not at ground level. Not at 32,000 feet. And in that moment, everyone understood, Marcus had not raised his voice. He had raised the standard. For several long seconds, no one in the cabin moved. It was as if the aircraft itself had forgotten how to breathe. Nicole stared down at her darkened tablet, her fingers trembling as if trying to wake a device that would never respond to her again. Captain Daniel's badge pulsed with a red warning light, each blink a reminder of authority slipping through his hands. The two security officers exchanged glances that carried the weight of sudden, irreversible consequences. And through it all, Marcus Carter remained standing in the aisle, composed and steady, not triumphant but resolute, the calm center of a storm none of them had seen coming. A man in row 4 broke the silence first. "Good," he muttered under his breath, just loud enough to be heard by those around him. "It is about time someone held people accountable." A woman further up added. They were ready to drag him out without even looking at a single fact. Marcus heard the whispers, but kept his eyes on the crew. "You were not suspended because I am the chief executive officer," he said. "You were suspended because you forgot to treat a human being with dignity." Nicole shook her head, tears breaking loose despite her attempt to hold them back. "Mr. Carter, please. I swear I did not mean any harm. I was just doing what I thought was best for the passengers. I was protecting the cabin." Marcus answered in the same steady voice. "You were protecting your bias, not the cabin." Nicole pressed her hands together as if pleading for oxygen. "It was a misunderstanding. It was misconduct," Marcus corrected. "And misconduct has consequences." The captain stepped forward again, this time without the authority he had earlier. He looked smaller now, humbled, embarrassed, cornered by the truth. "Mr. Carter," he said, his voice cracking, "I take full responsibility for the actions of my staff." Marcus shook his head. "That is not enough." The captain blinked. "Excuse me. Responsibility without accountability is just a speech," Marcus replied. "And you delivered that speech too late." The words landed with a weight that pressed the captain back into silence. Then Rachel's voice came quietly through Marcus's earpiece. "Marcus, the board has authorized the next step. They are asking if you want immediate removal of the responsible personnel from the aircraft or if you prefer to address them after landing. Corporate is ready for either option." Passengers exchanged wide-eyed glances. One whispered, "He can have them removed right now." Another murmured, "This is unbelievable." Marcus looked around the cabin, taking in the faces that had watched, whispered, recorded, judged, doubted, and finally understood. "Rachel," he said calmly, "proceed with immediate removal." Nicole gasped as if the air had been punched out of her lungs. "Mr. Carter, please, I am begging you, do not do this. I have a family. I have responsibilities. You cannot just end everything I have worked for." Marcus's gaze remained steady. "You ended at the moment you decided my presence was a threat. My title only revealed what your behavior had already proven." Captain Daniel spoke again, voice shaking. "Sir, this will delay the flight. Please reconsider. There must be another way." Marcus turned to him slowly. "Captain, if another passenger had been treated the way I was, what would you have done?" The captain swallowed. "We would have removed the offending staff." "Immediately." Marcus nodded. "Then that is exactly what will happen now." A heavy silence followed. Marcus continued. "Equality means the rules work the same for everyone, not only when it is convenient." The security officers looked at the captain. The captain looked at Nicole. Nicole looked at the floor. One of the officers finally spoke, voice trembling with the weight of protocol turned against them. "Per your instruction, Mr. Carter, Nicole Hayes, senior flight attendant, and Captain Daniel Strauss are to be escorted off the aircraft at once." Gasps shot through the cabin like sparks. A woman whispered, "He is not playing." Another man added, "This is justice in real time." Nicole stumbled backward, shaking uncontrollably. "Please," she cried. "I cannot lose my job. I cannot." Marcus's expression softened only a fraction. "You did not lose your job because of who I am. You lost it because of what you chose to do." The captain did not plead. He simply nodded, as if recognizing the inevitable consequence of his own blindness. "I understand," he whispered. "I am ready." The officers moved in carefully, no longer aggressive but somber. They guided Nicole and the captain toward the exit. Mia stepped aside, her shoulders trembling, but her eyes steady. As they passed her, Nicole whispered, "This is your fault." Mia replied quietly, "No, this is yours." The cabin erupted in murmurs and shocked breaths as the two were escorted down the aisle, past rows of passengers who had witnessed every moment of their downfall. When the door closed behind them, the aircraft felt different. Lighter. Changed. Marcus turned slowly, scanning the faces that watched him with awe, shame, admiration, and gratitude. Then, in a voice soft enough to steady the room yet strong enough to define it, he said, "This is not about power. This is about principle. And principles do not change based on who is sitting in the seat. And with that, the cabin finally breathed again. For a long moment after the aircraft door sealed behind Captain Daniel and Nicole Hayes, the cabin remained suspended in a stunned, electric quiet. No one moved. No one breathed too loudly. It felt as if every person aboard Flight 227 was processing the same impossible truth. They had just watched the chief executive officer of the airline remove its own commanding crew in real time. Marcus Carter stood in the aisle, calm and grounded, not as a man reveling in authority, but as someone who had waited his entire life for a moment in which justice did not require shouting to be heard. Slowly, he returned to his seat in 2A. The gesture was simple, but the weight behind it made the entire first-class section shift with a collective exhale. A woman across the aisle leaned forward slightly and whispered, "I have never seen anything like that." A man behind her added, "He stayed calm the whole time. That is real leadership." Mia Lang stood a few feet away, hands clasped tightly in front of her, as if unsure whether she should speak or simply stay out of the way. Marcus looked up at her with a level, steady expression. "Mia," he said, "take a breath." She let out a shaky exhale she had been holding for far too long. "Sir," she whispered, "I thought they were going to drag you out. I thought I was going to lose my job. I just knew what I saw, and I could not pretend otherwise." Marcus nodded once, a gesture of affirmation. "Integrity is not always loud, Mia. Sometimes it is just refusing to look away." She swallowed hard, her eyes bright with both relief and disbelief. From Marcus's earpiece, Rachel's voice returned. "Marcus, the board has confirmed removal of Captain Strauss and Senior Attendant Hayes. Regional Operations is deploying a replacement crew now. Estimated arrival is 15 minutes. Marcus answered quietly, "Understood. Please proceed with the follow-up protocols." Rachel continued, "Compliance will contact the remaining staff shortly. The board also wants to commend the trainee for upholding verification standards. They want her name." Marcus glanced at Mia. "I will give it to you soon." Passengers leaned into the aisle, some forming quiet clusters of conversation. She saved him. If she had not spoken up, those people would have taken him off the plane. Can you imagine firing the captain on the spot? But Marcus was not listening to the chatter. Instead, he was focused on the two security officers who still stood nearby, unsure whether to remain, leave, or apologize. One of them cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter," he said carefully, "I want to say I am sorry. I should have verified the information myself instead of relying on assumptions." Marcus looked at him. "Your job is to protect passengers, all passengers, not to enforce someone else's snap judgment." The officer nodded, shoulders heavy with regret. "Yes, sir. I understand that now." The second officer spoke as well. "We acted too quickly. Next time, we will check the manifest ourselves before taking action." Marcus gave a small nod. That is all anyone expects. At the front of the cabin, the remaining attendants hurriedly recalibrated their duties. The acting lead, a composed woman named Erin, approached Marcus with her hands folded. "Mr. Carter, on behalf of the remaining crew, I want to sincerely apologize for what happened. We were not aware of what the others were doing. We did not see the deletion. We did not see the scan. We failed to intervene." Marcus considered her words. "Acknowledging failure is the first step toward fixing it." Erin nodded. "The replacement captain will take over as soon as his team boards. We will ensure you are treated with respect for the remainder of the flight." Marcus replied evenly. "Respect should not depend on titles." Erin lowered her eyes. "You are right." Meanwhile, a passenger in row 5 raised his voice. "Sir, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for standing your ground. My nephew went through something similar at an airport last year. Nobody believed him. Watching you today, it means something." Another woman added, "Seeing consequences happen immediately, instead of hidden behind a corporate statement, it is powerful." Marcus listened, but kept his expression neutral. He had heard countless stories like theirs over the years, each one a reminder of how persistent the same pattern had been. Judged first, proven later. Dignity never granted automatically. Finally, Rachel's voice spoke through the earpiece again. "Marcus, new captain on standby. They want your authorization to resume boarding when ready." Marcus closed his eyes briefly before responding. "Give me 2 minutes." He opened them again and looked slowly around the cabin, at the passengers who had watched everything unfold, at the staff who had witnessed a system correct itself in real time, at Mia, who had risked her job to tell the truth. And in that moment, he knew that the chaos was not the point. The correction was. Justice did not always roar. Sometimes it entered the cabin as quietly as a man in a white shirt taking his rightful seat. And for the first time since the confrontation began, the entire aircraft seemed to understand it. The new flight crew boarded with a quiet urgency, their footsteps controlled, their eyes widened slightly as they entered a cabin still dense with the echo of everything that had just happened. The replacement captain, a composed man in his mid-40s with a calm gaze and a measured stride, approached Marcus Carter first. He did not extend his hand immediately. Instead, he paused, as if acknowledging the weight of the moment before speaking. "Mr. Carter," he said respectfully, "I am Captain Reynolds. I have been fully briefed on the situation. I want to assure you that from this point forward, you will be treated with the professionalism and dignity every passenger deserves." Marcus nodded once, accepting the gesture without seeking reassurance. "Thank you, Captain." Captain Reynolds continued, "We are conducting a system-wide reset of passenger verification to ensure no additional errors were made. I will also personally oversee all final checks before we depart." Passengers watched the exchange with silent awe. One whispered, "That is how he should have been treated from the start." Another murmured, "Night and day difference." Aaron, now the acting lead attendant, approached cautiously. "Mr. Carter, we have completed internal documentation. Mia Lang has been noted for her honesty and adherence to procedure. The board has already requested her employee ID for commendation." Mia's face flushed with shock. "Sir, I do not know what to say." Marcus turned to her. "Say nothing. Just continue to do what is right, even when it costs you." She nodded vigorously, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. Meanwhile, a soft chime came through Marcus's earpiece. Rachel spoke again, her voice crisp and steady. "Marcus, compliance has finalized the initial report. They want to know if you want to issue immediate temporary suspension for the 2 security officers as well. The board believes their unverified escalation contributed directly to the incident." Marcus looked at the 2 officers, both standing stiffly near the galley, their expressions full of dread. He considered them for a long moment before answering. "No," he said finally. They hesitated. They questioned. And they acknowledged their mistake. Intent matters. The officers exhaled almost in unison, the relief evident in the slump of their shoulders. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," one said. "We will do better. I swear it." Marcus nodded. "See that you do." Captain Reynolds stepped forward again. "Mr. Carter, once you are ready, we will close the doors and resume departure preparations." Marcus looked around the cabin. Every passenger watched him with an attention that felt different than before. Not because he was the chief executive officer, not because he had authority, but because they had witnessed the cost of prejudice and the power of quiet correction. Slowly, Marcus stood, not to make a speech, but simply to address the people who had lived the moment with him. "I want to say something," he said, his voice calm and measured. The entire cabin stilled. Even the new crew paused. "Today," Marcus began, "was not about a seat. It was not about a ticket. It was not about titles or badges or protocol." He let the silence breathe before continuing. "It was about how quickly dignity can be stripped away from someone who does not fit an expectation." Several passengers nodded, the truth hitting with the force of lived experience. Marcus continued, "I have been underestimated my entire life. Judged before I spoke, stopped before I moved, questioned before I acted. And every time, I had to decide whether to swallow the insult or confront it." He glanced toward the door where Nicole and Captain Strauss had been escorted out. "Today, I chose confrontation. Not for myself, but for every person who has been told they do not belong. For every traveler who has been profiled. For every passenger who has had their truth dismissed." A murmur of approval rolled through the cabin like a wave. Marcus returned to his seat, the weight of the moment settling gently rather than harshly. "This airline," he said, "must earn the trust of every customer. Not just the ones who look the part." Captain Reynolds bowed his head respectfully. "Understood, sir." Rachel's voice echoed once more in Marcus's ear. "Marcus, the board wants to authorize a system-wide audit. Every incident, every complaint, every deleted log. They want your confirmation." Marcus replied softly, "Approved." Passengers heard the word. They felt it. Reform did not start in a boardroom. It started here, at 32,000 feet, with witnesses, consequences, and truth laid bare. Captain Reynolds signaled to close the cabin doors. As they sealed with a resonant thud, the aircraft seemed to settle into a new equilibrium, one reshaped by justice rather than hierarchy. Marcus adjusted his seatbelt as the overhead lights dimmed slightly. A woman 2 rows back leaned into the aisle and said, "Mr. Carter, thank you for not walking away." Marcus looked forward, eyes steady. "I have walked away too many times. Not today." The engines hummed to life. The runway lights stretched ahead like a path rewritten. And as Flight 227 prepared for takeoff, every soul on board understood the truth. Marcus had not just reclaimed his seat. He had raised the standard for everyone who would ever sit in one again.